Hello boys and girls, welcome to the Celtic Minded podcast. I'm Frank and he's Tommy. And by the way, you will get top marks. You're an Einstein if you notice that it's not quite Frank the day. Some of you might be saying, well, wait a wee minute, what's happened? Frank's had a makeover. Well, there is a wee bit of truth to that because there is an element of Frank here in that we've got, and we're very, very proud to have him, we've got one of Frank's children. Paul is here today to fill in for his dad because his dad is away bloody on holiday for a week, away sunning himself.
Got the same forehead.
He's away, I think he's actually with one of your brothers.
Yeah, he's with Scott.
He's away with Scott. And we won't say where he is, but it's got a better climate than what we've got, is that right?
That's right, he's in Spain.
Right, so he's in Spain and we're missing him, but while he's away, we might just get some stories about Frankie boy from his son Paul, and we'll get into that in a wee moment. But first of all, it's the morning after the night before, and I've got to say, like most Celtic supporters, Paul, I was absolutely on the edge of my seat last night. I was angry because I'll be honest, I didn't think we played well at all.
No.
All across the park, I thought we were poor. Even our good players, I thought, were poor. However, it summed up two things for me. Number one, the spirit in that team right now for Big Ange is brilliant.
Yeah.
Never say die. Right to the final whistle. And for anybody that's complaining about, oh, they played extra time, Starfelt was doing for more than 6 minutes getting his bloody nose seen to after getting an elbow right in it that the ref amazingly missed. So there was no problem with the extra time. So it showed up the good side, the yin, if you like, was that, hey, we go the whole hog, we go the whole way. But the yang, the bad side was threadbare. How threadbare our team and our pool is. We had players out there, quite frankly, Paul, who I doubt will be there in January.
No, but Tommy, you're playing with two fullbacks that are front men, and you're saying we're threadbare, but how many teams in the world can have 6, if you include Dembele, 7 front-minded players out, 3 centre forwards out, Man U, Real Madrid, any of these teams, if you take 6 players out of their first team, I don't know anybody that could.
It's a good point, mate. It's a good point. And what do you say about that? Is it just bad luck, or is it something to do with the training? I've heard Big Ange say, listen, these things happen, it doesn't matter how you train. But the circumstances, I mean, you pull in the best goal scorer, top goal scorer in the Dutch league, we've yet to really get a chance to see him, Big Giamakis.
Aye. Well, I said to my mate yesterday, I said, what is happening in training? I think it's WWF stars that are taking training. Because how can you have so many? I think it's Undertaker that's running the forwards training, because it's to have 7 out is there's something not quite right. And Andrew's a stubborn man, and I love him to bits, but he maybe needs to tone it down a wee bit. I don't know what he's doing, but
well, I'll tell you what, Paul, I've watched recent interviews with Big Ange, and the interesting thing is, because some people have been saying about sports science is important in the modern game, and monitoring the players in terms of their training in order to try and avoid injuries like that. And I heard Big Ange being really, really robust in that when he said, listen, sports science in Australian football and in Japan is massive. It's even more important than it was in our game. So the idea that anybody would speak to him about sports science, he says, is just ridiculous. And he repeats in these interviews that he comes with a style of play. And that's his style of play. And if you don't want it, then fine. So he's not going to change his style of play. It seems his 4-3-3 formation is his 4-3-3 formation.
And it's definitely not going to change, but when you start to get 7 forward-thinking players, 3 strikers, 3 your main strikers out, you might need to think something not quite right. When somebody like Giacomakis is injured after 3 games, Ayeti after 20 minutes, Kyogo's been injured twice. Anybody coming back seems to be injured after 2 games. You get guys like Mikey Johnson that just seems constantly injured, but there's something not quite right. And maybe it's a long-term plan that he gets them all super fit, but when you've got as many, you might need to...
Paul, it may be that the tempo that he's demanding from his forwards in terms of this closing down, because he's absolutely adamant that the way to put teams under pressure is you close them down at the back.
Yeah.
You force them to go long. You give your defenders a better chance with balls in the air and things like that. So maybe your Ayetis of the world weren't used to that type of stressful work. Jota's probably, I mean, if we're honest, in terms of we got him because he wasn't getting a game with Benfica, so he wasn't playing that much football. And big Giamakis, well, Giamakis or whatever way you say it, we've not seen enough of him. But he doesn't seem to be high energy. He seems to be wanting the ball in, being a focal point, which is good. It gives us a different option how to play. But I just wonder, should something be tweaked as far as the training's concerned?
It needs to be. Or there needs to be reinforcements, and hopefully we've all heard about the plans for January, and if they're true, then great. But the style of the forward that he's wanting and these Japanese guys that you read about, they're all high energy. You look at the boy Maeda, and I know you can't go with YouTube, but we thought Shved was going to be the next Ronaldo. But if you look at Maeda, oh my God, have you seen his YouTube?
I've watched it, mate. I'm so excited. I spoke to your dad about this the last podcast. And not surprisingly, your dad hadn't seen it. I don't think he's as good on YouTube as you are, right enough. But anyway, he says you watch things you shouldn't be watching. But the Maeda, I thought, was absolutely outstanding. I've never seen a turn of pace like this. It was incredible. Now, you know what happens, don't you? It's a curse, innit?
I know.
We talk him up and talk him up. Before you know it, you've signed Raphael Shite. You know, you think he's Brazilian, or he'll be great.
I know.
Jesus.
I used to slag Tommy about that one. I was like, why did you buy that?
Right, exactly. Well, look, that brings us nicely, doesn't it? Because it's fantastic, Paul, to have you on. It really is an honour, mate. Because I was speaking to you yesterday, and I was asking you about what it's like to grow up with a dad as a Celtic football legend. I mean, incredible. Most of the listeners and the viewers of the podcast will be jealous of you, because the next best thing to being the legend is having your dad as a legend. So absolutely brilliant. And you said to me dead casually that you remember practicing free kicks in the garden with Davy Provan. I mean, it's not a bad wee guy to give you some advice for your free kicks. We could have done with him last night by the number of free kicks we had.
Crazy.
I think we only hit the target once. But tell us, what's your abiding memories of growing up in that household with your dad as a Celtic legend?
Well, your first memories are from year 5 and 6 and stuff like that. And obviously, as a child, you take everything in your stride. You don't think anything of it. You know, you're primary 2 and you're playing football with primary 4s and 5s, and everyone's trying to be your best mate at that point. And you just think you just
popular.
So you just take everything in your stride. And it's not till when you said yesterday, you start thinking back, that was a bit mental, you know. It's like Davy Provan used to come into the house and he would call me Diego, because I was always playing football and trying to do stuff in the house, and he would call my brother Sean Karate Kid, because Sean was always trying to karate. And you start thinking about the times where you take it for granted at the time. You know, my memories of growing up were my dad's friends. He was best friends with Tommy. Clearly that was his best mate, and why I had such a great relationship with him. And my mum is still best friends with Rosemary. And then you've got Packy and Charlie, but we're all friends, and Davy and things like that. And to this day I'm best friends with Andy Bonner and all the Burnses and Sophie and Nadine, Charlie's girls and stuff like that. No, but probably the biggest memory for me is the parties.
Right.
He used to have, and I was a wee bit older than my 3 siblings, so I would stay up a wee bit longer. I always remember like the parties were mental.
Right.
I remember Dom Sullivan.
Oh, wait a minute, we better watch you because your dad might not go as far as you're going to go. I hope you censor these things. And I spoke to Dom recently at the Rocks doing a lovely guy. So
Dom is I'm 7, 8 years old at this time, but Dom was, mate, he used to run about the house like a monkey for hours. And then you would sit and listen to them all sing, and you know, it was great. Tommy and Packy and Charlie and all that sing, brilliant. And all they don't get called wags back in the days, but they were all, you know, good chanters. The funny thing is they're still singing the exact same songs now. 35 years on, you know, Rosemary's still singing Bill Milk Buttercup 35 years on, but they were great times. And you know, you just took it for granted, and everything just kind of went in your stride. Nothing was what you would expect. The Frankie boy, you wouldn't get like a normal, like everything was a wee bit out of sync. But I was a great child to used to play football every day, and growing up with guys like Davy Provan and Tommy in your house every couple of nights, you know, it was brilliant.
Paul, it's incredible to hear you talk about the amount of legends that you've just mentioned, and that point that you make is there's nothing abnormal. But I mean, if I meet any of them, I'm in awe. But to you, that's the way you were brought up. So of course it's nothing abnormal to you. And I suppose for all the siblings of them, you're friends with them, and you've got that in common, haven't you? Because you've got the point where you go probably for a meal and you get used to everybody staring at your dad, or they want an autograph with your dad or whatever. But tell me, you know, you did raise it there in terms of a Tam, an exceptional person.
Oh, brilliant. Tommy was, we used to call him Uncle Tommy, but he was much more than that. You know, he was in the house every few nights, and we went through some difficult times at periods, and he was always there for my mum, for my dad. It was just unbelievable. Everybody said everything you want to say about Tommy, and he was, you know, really special to me. And people say he's a family man. I can give you an example of that, if you like. Me and his daughter Emma were to be seen sometimes in the old nightclubs, bonkers, having a wee kiss now and again. And whatever reason, one Sunday we never met up or whatever, and me and Tommy at this point were trying to learn Spanish. I don't know why, and he used to phone me and just talk Spanish,
right?
Just randomly. And I answered the phone saying, "Hola, Tommy." If you ever go effing near him, I will kill you. Oh. And you know,
not in Spanish.
No, that wasn't in Spanish. I was like, I nearly cried. I was driving. I was like, but 2 weeks later, big cuddle. I meant what I said, but I love you.
Right.
And that was it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Very protective of his daughter. Given that I've got a 16-year-old daughter myself, Paul, I think I would be in Tam's camp if I heard that she was hanging about with you, mate. I'd be worried as well. Anyway, so and you mentioned Davy Provan, and that brings me to games. Yes. And I did ask you to think about your memory. I mean, I constantly bring up the 85 final because, you know, your dad won it for us. But Davy scored the equaliser that day, didn't he?
Right,
for the free kick. So what was it like in terms of their chat? Did they talk football a lot, or was it just personal stuff? Did they you know, did you earwig to what they were talking about?
Well, Davy and my dad were golf buddies, and they were out golfing, and a lot of the time me and Sean were very similar ages, so we would be out in the golf course, and you would hear them, you know, it was 50 quid a hole, 10 quid a hole and all that, and they had the golf buggy. One time Sean started driving the golf buggy, and they were teeing off and they were arguing who won the previous hole, and Sean just drove it, and he didn't know how to stop the golf buggy right into the bushes. And he had a tree, and he had a ditch. And the two of them were chasing after us.
Were you in the buggy?
I was in the buggy.
And the interesting thing is, because this does bring us to other stories, because what you've just talked there about, £10 all, £50 all. Competitiveness. Competitiveness. I mean, that's a streak. Well, put it this way, I don't suppose you can be a successful footballer without being competitive.
No.
You want to win. You want to win whether it's tiddlywinks. I play, we play poker quite a lot with your dad. And, I mean, he's an absolute terrible player, but he's competitive. But tell us, he used to love his five-a-sides. Talk us through the five-a-sides.
Well, I must have been 16 when I started playing with him, and he'd retired, so he must have been early 40s, and we had a five-a-side team. We were.
By the way, I need to interrupt you, but he was still very good in that day, because I played with him as well. You couldn't get a ball off him. You just couldn't get a ball off him.
At that point, Tommy, we were destroying teams. I was like a pin, you know, and we had a great goalie, and we had a brilliant team. We were destroying teams, destroying them. But because of the competitive streak, and he couldn't transform from professional football to guys playing after a few pints. So he's playing, he's talking to my mates. I've brought up one of my mates, and guys are getting off crying, I'll never play with your dad again. A bad pass. Guys are getting destroyed. Destroyed.
Paul, he's actually, you might not remember this, but he's actually brought your team out of Pollock Shaw's. No goals, but the indoor one. One night. It was a challenge. I was to part my team again. And your dad was slaughtering your team. Incredible. I think he beat us that night, but he's were good. He's were good.
Some of the teams we had were brilliant, but that competitiveness, he couldn't switch off. So he's playing guys at five-a-sides the way he would be playing against Rangers centre halves. So he's elbowing them, he's telling them terrible things he's saying to them, and I'm hearing it and I'm like, for God, you can't say that. But that came with its own risks. Guys are battering him, and then as he got older, they couldn't batter him, so they're battering him. And so what happened was, one time at Shawlands, my sister was there, my sister Jenny, she was there, she's watching it, it was you're getting £200 for winning the league. You'd think the way the players are playing, you'd think you were getting 200,000. But long story short, mass brawl, people throwing bottles onto the pitch. My dad done
Seriously?
He was, at one point he was battering 3 guys. I just picked the weakest guy I could find to try and fight him. But everybody's fighting, he's running about. We ended up getting barred for goals and Shawlands for 6 months. We couldn't play. And then I'll tell you one more story about this. So, fast forward 10 years later, nobody wanted to play with my dad because they would get abuse or whatever. So we'd set up our own wee teams. I was playing a team for, you're for Pollock, aren't you?
Yep.
So we're playing a team for Pollock, rough and ready boys, and we were a wee bit more skillful. So again, for £250 bar vouchers, and this team had brought a crowd. So my dad's watching Shawlands again, he's watching for the top, and my pal Tony gets hammered. You should have got a night in the cell for this time.
Right, okay.
Unbelievable. So my dad, I could see him, he's like, so he starts shouting, "Get me a pair of football boots! Get me a pair of football boots!" The next minute, one of the boys walked off. He's like, "I'm not playing in this is ridiculous." There was guys spitting us at the side of the pitch and all sorts. The guy's like, "I know what car you..." It was wild, beyond.
I think it might have been Postle, no Pollock. I've got to say, Pollock boys aren't like that.
So the next minute, my dad's on the pitch and battering the guy that done my friend. Oh, it was just, again, we get locked in the pitch with this crew, and it was like 7 of them, and it was just, it became too hard to play with them because it got too much. But it was just his competitiveness. And then when he turned, it was still outstanding, even when he was 60. You know, he could create a goal and he was controlling games. But it got to the point where he was 62 maybe, and I said I've had enough, because it was me that was getting it down and he couldn't run. And then I get the call one night for a hospital, I think it was Victoria Hospital. "Your dad's here, his teeth knocked out." And I was like, I knew he was playing football that night. So he wound somebody up so much. Total coward has just went by him and just... And I said, right, enough's enough. But that was only 4 years
Paul,
ago.
the point you're making is, you're absolutely right, because it doesn't matter how much you wind somebody up. It's a coward that does that, you know, elbows you. He wasn't even looking at, I wasn't there, but I've had it described. I think he ended up losing a crown and everything, causing thousands of pounds worth of damage to his mouth. Terrible, pathetic actually. However, it does show competitiveness that your old man has had all his life. Your memories of watching particular games, I mean, I think you were only 7 at the time of the '85 Cup final. Did you manage to see it? Were you there, or did you watch it on the telly, or what?
My mum was going, and my pal Tommy Bannatyne at the time, he stayed about 5 doors down, so I was in their house. But I'm a 6, 7-year-old, and you're thinking to yourself, loving the game, and you love football and stuff like that. But we were I remember the first half we were out playing. You weren't as
dedicated, right?
But the second half, certainly, we were in the house, and it was a bit of a rammy, stramash, whatever. And I just remember getting picked off of my mate's mum, and I was like, "Who scored?" And there was
your
tears,
dad.
and she's like, "Your dad."
Oh,
and you're like, "Oh, brilliant, brilliant!"
Fabulous.
And the scenes were amazing.
Fabulous. I mean, you know, how many Celtic players have joined the 100 club? You know, over 100 goals for Glasgow Celtic, and your dad's one of them. I mean, that must make you feel enormously proud.
Totally, brilliant. And some of the goals, I remember when I was younger, and it was old videotapes, you know, and I used to watch it. Mum's like, "Are you watching that again?" And it was always, I used to just put it in and just watch it repeatedly. And it was, my favourite goal was one of the goals he scored against the Mill. I think they won 7-1. He scored a hat-trick at half-time, and he beat a few men and scored it. And I used to, I
think that's the one where nobody could understand how he never fell. It was like, what do they call that? The Weebles wobble. And he just wouldn't go down because they were trying to tackle, and he bang, 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 and he scored.
Unbelievable. But I remember the wee sort of hall area, and the wee sort of ball that size, and I used to try and replicate that and chip it onto the couch.
Fabulous.
Great memories.
What that brings me to that point, isn't it? Because obviously you look at some of the, whether it's the Strachan relationship, whether it's other guys in football, Schmeichel follows his dad, becomes a goalkeeper. Did you? Is that what you wanted to be, Paul?
Did 100%.
You? Yep.
100%, right. And I got the chance, and probably my, like, you know, I look at my younger brother Scott. He had much more dedication than me. I think I thought I'd made it by the time I was maybe 12, 13. You were, you know, doing really well in school teams, and people watching you could beat men. And as I said, David Provan used to call me Maradona when he used to come in. But my issue was, when I turned 16, 17, I probably thought I'd made it before I had. And then there was another issue. I turned into Frank McGarvey as opposed to Frank McGarvey.
And Frank's a lovely guy as well. But, you know, sometimes hormones run wild.
Oh, that's it. I was playing with St Mirren a few games, and I would be in the Paisley nightclubs, Fury Murray's with a St Mirren tie. I wasn't even playing. So by
this time, so this is what, 16, 17, 18? So St Mirren Boys Club?
Aye, we were playing a youth team. We played with some brilliant players. I played up front with a guy called Burton O'Brien that season, and he went on to play for Blackburn, 2.2 million I think he signed, and another boy, McNamee, went for about 1 point. We had a brilliant team, you know, and I scored a good goal, and I think it was the quarterfinals of the BP Youth Cup. It was then against Partick Thistle, and you thought at that point you're getting mentioned and stuff like that, so I just probably didn't have the will to win as much as I should have, because I dare say I had a wee bit of talent,
right?
But maybe not the
maybe not a hunger that your old man had, because
you think you've got it, you know, and if I had the will to win, like say my brother Scott, who's maybe not got the technical side of it, but the hunger, you know, maybe it would have been a different story.
So if you could have joined the two together, it'd have been a different story.
Possibly.
Because your dad often tells the story, which I think is a fantastic story, because when he goes to the Rock to get a game, he gets told by the manager that he's not good enough, and and he doesn't get a game. And then his next 3 managers are Alec Ferguson, Bob Paisley, and Billy McNeil, you know, so the idea of, for a youngster who's maybe feeling down if he's not getting picked up right away, they should take a bit of credit and a bit of inspiration for your dad's story, because he never gave up.
Totally, and you look at, you know, McAvenny never made it to into his 20s. I think it was Ian Wright never made it to his mid-20s. There's so many of them, even Vardy. So aye, any younger guys, you stick in and you keep doing it. You've got to have the desire, and these days you've got to train, and you can't be like I was on the Saturday night if you're a sub drinking.
Well, do you know, here's a cracker. You probably know Willie McStay, and you would have certainly met and know Paul, the maestro.
Yeah.
I was listening to Willie speak. I was on the More Than 90 Minutes show on Sunday before the game, for the Motherwell game. And Willie was speaking, and he told a wonderful story about his debut. Now, as soon as he mentioned his debut, I'm thinking, oh, that's good. I know that, because he made his debut with Frank, because Frank was playing in the debut, and I think it was against the Rangers. In those days, it was Rangers. Now it's the Rangers, obviously. But the point is, I thought that's what he was going to say. Here, his debut wasn't. It was against Brecon City in the League Cup. It was his league debut was against the Rangers, right? But what happens is he makes his debut against Brecon, and he tells us that he's in his house Saturday morning. Phone goes. His dad says, "You better take this. You better take this." It's Davy Hay. Davy Hay on the phone. "Hey, get yourself in here. You're playing today, right?" He goes in. It was a nothing each, he says, against Brecon City at home, which was a poor result, but he got the man of the match. And from then, that was him in the team, right? And what a story, Paul, for any youngster thinking about, oh, I'll never get a chance, to be ready. Because you just made the point, we're out on Friday nights, Saturday nights, whatever. If you're not playing, you need to be ready, because it can happen just like that.
Of course. And these days, I said, you need to, any youngsters out there, they need to have all the things that they probably didn't do in the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s. They need to have the right diet, they need to be training ferociously, and you need to have that mindset where this is my career, and you can't be doing what I possibly tried to do, is having best of both worlds. Now,
we've got a new era at Celtic Park. We've got a guy come in, and I sometimes, Paul, maybe it's because I like Neil, friends with Neil's agent, and therefore maybe I've got a blind spot, but I felt that the criticism that came Neil's way was over the top, in my opinion, because we had invested so much emotion in winning the 10, hadn't we? You know, it was, I called it the Holy Grail, and it was a cross that we came to carry, because we put so much hope in it. And the truth is, Paul, I think this season's more important than even the 10, from the point of view of that Champions League money, the point of view of turning round the balance of power in Glasgow. Because I'll tell you what, I'm going to be really angry if the team across the city manages to get that. We need to win that in order to keep our dominance. What do you think?
I agree. I loved Lenny, but there's too many things that there wasn't one thing. You couldn't say it was because Edward had a bad season. You couldn't say it was because we went to Dubai in January. There was a build-up of collective things, Barcast being one. But there was about 7 or 8 things that didn't go in our favour last year. How many COVID cases did we have last year? So there was a build-up of things that caused it. And yes, as much as I love Lenny, he made mistakes along the way as well. And you can't go on a run of results that we went and not become... you can't get pressure from the run of results that he went on. But yeah, now
Paul,
it's a different...
Paul, I was discussing this with a mate the other day, you know, and I remember the first game of the season against Hamilton. 5-0, Edward scores a hat-trick. I then remember we're going to sign Shane Duffy, we're going to sign David Turnbull. We already had signed the Greek number 1.
That's right.
We'd already secured Elyounoussi for another year. We were bringing in a £5 million striker for West Ham, who apparently moved for 15 million to West Ham for Switzerland. I remember thinking, we're doing this. We're doing this. So see all the fans who now turn around and say, I told you so and all that. I think they've got to get a right grip of themselves. We had an absolute conflation of everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was just a season of disaster followed by disaster.
And you know, on top of that, a lot of things that frustrate me is some of the fans that jump on, it's the board's fault, it's the board's fault. In hindsight, they should have maybe let Cham and possibly Ayar or anybody else that wanted to go, because it definitely didn't help us that players that were there that were kind of forced to stay. But in defence of the board, they said to Lenny, no, we're no selling. We normally sell a player for 20 million every year, but they said, no, we're not selling anyone this year. We're keeping Edward, we're keeping Cham, we're keeping Ayar, we're keeping Frimpong, whoever it may be. And they stuck by Lenny, so you can't blame. It was, as you said, it was a series of incidents and accidents and misfortunes. And
I think the criticism of the board, Paul, goes much deeper and longer. I mean, my criticism of the board is the lack of investment in previous years. I mean, when you're on the top, how do you sign the top? You need to make sure you're investing. I think they didn't have their eye on the ball in terms of the vision. With, you know, a fullback. For God's sake, how many times did we say we need a new fullback? They didn't do it, and so from my point of view, that's their difficulty. However, the point about Lenny and his commitment and his mistakes, many of those mistakes were, I think, very, very credible mistakes. I mean, you buy the Greek number 1, you think he's going to be good. He turned out to be probably the single biggest problem in the team. I mean, we were out the Champions League because of Barkas. I mean, the goals that he lost were incredible.
Tommy, even this season, the one against Michelin, he's put us out of Europe in that one as well. He's done it 2 seasons in a row.
Come on it. And he's probably a nice guy, right? But he's not for us. No. He's certainly not for us. And what I think is incredible is the idea that we bring in a guy now who seems to have brought in a philosophy to the club that he wants to change it all, and it's all about attacking, Paul. And I love the character of the guy.
Oh, he's brilliant. And I listened to my dad on this podcast, and he's like, we need to get the every week. We need to get the defence, we need to get the defence. I think if we had Baresi and, you know, the best centre-halves in the world, you had the 2 best centre-halves, what was Baresi's sidekick?
Oh God, I can't tell you. Your dad would be able to say.
Aye, but you had these guys as the 2 centre-halves. Unfortunately, you're not going to have a great defence, Tommy, because you've got our defensive midfielder is Callum McGregor. Is he the defensive midfielder? No. And then you've got Abada, right wing. And then you've got Tommy Rogic, forward-thinking player. Then you've got Turnbull, forward-thinking player. Then you've got Jota. And then you've got a forward. You've got 7 forwards.
Yep.
Yeah, and then you're, not only that, you're saying to your full-backs, not only do we want you to attack, but we want you to be inverted and attack from the middle. Imagine being a centre-half for Celtic. So we need to get over this thing, we need to get better at defence. No, we need to be more clinical.
In attack, yeah.
We need to finish our chances better. And the amount of chances that we missed against Motherwell, against Dundee United in the last few weeks, we should be winning these games 6-7-0. We need to get more clinical. I think we've got better. I know we lost a goal for a set piece last night. I think we've got better at set pieces. I think we're scoring goals for set pieces, but we need to get more clinical.
I was disappointed last night, Paul, because the goal we did lose, Big Liam Scales is probably at fault, right?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm disappointed is because I like the guy. I think he's a good addition. I think he had a good game generally last night. I think he's set up for the goal was immense. I mean, lovely ball across the box, great run into the space. Callum finds him, which was great. But if we don't strengthen in January, we're not going to win the championship, because we need to be able in January, in my opinion, to bring in a minimum, I think a minimum of 4, preferably 5 quality additions that are going to make our midfield and forward line, absolutely more solid. And if this boy's going to come in the left-hand side, Hayati, I think he's called, I'm not sure whether he should be playing left back, because I'll be honest, I think Scholes is good enough to be our left back. I prefer him to Taylor. He's got more stature. He's going to be better. This is a contradiction because of what happened last night, but he should be better at set pieces because of his height, because of his stature. Young Adam has got a lot, I think. Maybe going out on loan would help him. But if we bring in at least 4 quality players, Paul, I think we can win the league.
Yeah. I think the main thing is bringing reinforcements in up front. I'm not too fussed about, as you regularly say, I'm not too fussed about left back and things like that. I think we've got cover there. But for me, we need help for Callum. He needs a rest, and hopefully McCarthy comes good, because I think he's a great player, but he needs to get up to speed. And he could be the saviour in the second half. He could be the difference, by the way, James McCarthy. See if he comes good in the second half, he could be a big influence. But forward thinking, I'm not a big fan of bringing 3 players in, all Japanese. I think it brings a divide in. And I think any Celtic team or the Rangers, they've always had a core of Scottish players. And I'm a wee bit worried that we lose that if we're bringing so many foreigners in. So I would love to see Maeda come in, possibly this boy Hayata, whatever he's called, because he can play in numerous positions. But I don't know about bringing 3 in. But we need cover, and we need to get these players fit. And I genuinely think if we can keep this gap to 4, and we all know the Old Firm game in the second, if we win that, that'll give us some boost for the second half of the season. I think we'll go on, because we know the situation the Rangers are in. They need to sell. They can't go on their skint. They need to sell players, and we're the opposite. We've got money there ready to be spent. So it's about time that we used it properly and in an advantage, and we can go on, hopefully.
Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. The time has just went like that.
I know.
We've sat down, had a chat. You've told us some great stories and given us a great insight to being the son of a Celtic legend, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you, brother. And let's hope we get you back on in a few months' time to celebrate winning the championship.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Hail, hail, boys and girls. Let's go for the final on Sunday and give Angie's first trophy.
Definitely.
Hail, hail.